Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
As always, it's on this podcast we like to talk to friends, we like to talk to colleagues, we like to sort of get the perspective from people in the trenches just like we are. And if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you are in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals and pick their brains on on a wide range of topics: current events, current projects, what's going on with them, sort of how they're adapting in the middle of this ever changing media landscape that we're kind of dealing with right now, and so very much more. And if you'd like to subscribe to this podcast, which we certainly hope that you do, please don't hesitate to find us over at Apple, over at Spotify, or you can find us archived, all our episodes archived over at youtube.com on our YouTube channel. We'd also love it if you'd follow us on social media, either at In the Seats or at It's Podcast One, for all sorts of updates on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And finally, please don't hesitate to join us over at intheseats.ca for all the latest and greatest movie reviews, news, and all sorts of fun stuff that our hardworking team gets up to. And before we tell you about today's guest, it is the holiday season, and we are a big proponent of sharing movies and talking about movies and doing whatever we can to promote the love of movies. But as much as we love movies, we love having them. We love owning them. We love being able to feel them in our hands, in a disc, in that kind of form. And if you're of a similar way, if you want something to buy, or if you want something to rent, there is still video stores out there. We do recommend you go over to Bay Street Video over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada. You can give them a call at 416-964-9088. Or you can email them over at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for all of your needs, because they are still open for curbside service pickup and even some mailing if you need something, if you want to buy something and have it, they can ship it out for you. They are just that accommodating and flying the flag for the video store, and we love them to death. But that's enough of my rambling. On today's episode, we are talking to she is a dear sweet friend. She is a powerhouse of entertainment journalism. She is a spitfire. She is full of positivity, and I love her to death. Her name is Johanna Gabriella Luna, and she is the host and producer over at Spotlight TV and Radio Network, and she's everywhere these days. She is quite possibly the hardest working woman in show business. And when we got to sit down, we talked with her just about sort of how she got into the business, how things have evolved for her, the kind of projects she gets into, and even some new stuff she's got going on too, like a podcast, just like us. But anyway, I hope you enjoy our talk with her, because I know I certainly did. And check her out, because, like I say, she is a force of nature, and she is covering all sorts of entertainment goodies and lifestyle goodies and everything in between. And we do recommend you give her a follow. All right, bye. All right, well, obviously, first off, just to kick it off properly, thanks for coming on. This is a real pleasure. We've known each other for a while, but getting to sit down and talk with you is a fun one, because you're always on the beat. You're high energy. You're going out there. I'm kind of curious, what got you into this business? What is the Johanna Luna origin story?
Yeah, it's a good question. I love the art of storytelling. I love connecting and getting a good story. I became a journalist. I went to J school at Sheridan College in 2008 and 2010 in Oakville. I lived there for 2 years because I'm originally from Toronto, and I loved it. I fell in love with the art of storytelling. And I always knew when I went to J school, I wanted to be an entertainment journalist, because I love those good feel stories, the rags to riches stories, the inspiring stories, the entertainment, just that entertainment world. And when I ventured off, I knew I couldn't just have a diploma. I knew I needed to have a degree. So luckily, my parents supported my dream as a journalist, and I went to university in Australia. I pursued my BA in journalism. I have a Griffith University BA, and from Gold Coast and Queensland, Australia. And I got my kickstart, man, Dave. I got my kickstart on radio with Jazz Radio 94.1 on the Gold Coast, and that's where the dream took off, and I rolled with it.
Well, that's a beautiful thing. I mean, I love hearing everyone's sort of origin stories because, I mean, especially in this business, as much as we all come to it from different angles, we all come to it as kind of fans first. And it's really a unique thing that we don't always necessarily appreciate when we're sort of in the moment of the madness trying to cover whatever we're covering.
You know what, Dave? I can tell you're passionate, and I can see that in your just the energy, the stories that you do. You're a film critic. You do a lot of national hits across Canada, and you can't fake passion. You know that? Like being a broadcaster for over a decade now, like it's either you have it or you don't. You know that? And I feel like you can tell when someone's really passionate what they do.
And in this business, and I mean, this kind of leads up to my next question because, especially during times like TIFF, it's so high octane and we're running 24/7, 365. But this year, everything just slowed down. And I'm kind of curious because we've all had to pivot. How have you and sort of Spotlight TV sort of tried to mix it up and sort of pivot where you needed to still be creating quality content out there?
It's a good question too. You got to reinvent yourself. You got to check yourself. You got to find out why you're in this business for the right reasons. And for me, it's always about the art of human connections, finding those good feel stories. And for me, I'm an entertainment journalist, yes, but I don't just stop there. I'm more than that. I don't want to just be known as the radio girl or a TV girl or a digital host. I want to be more than that. And I want to be the messenger of truth. And I want to report the facts. So I think COVID made me realize what really matters in life, priorities like family, quality time, and the art of storytelling. For me, like it's always about good stories for me. And I've always felt that for me, I love what I do. And it shows in my stories. Like I've done TIFF, Hockey Hall of Fame, Canadian Screen Awards, Junos, Arctic Inspiration Prize, the Wiseman Institute at Casa Loma, Sean Jones in Casa Loma. Like I've done so many cool stories that I just don't want to stop. I'm a journalist first and foremost. Like I love what I do. And yeah, we got to shift gears because of COVID time. There's no more red carpet stories.
Yeah.
So you got to be creative and think outside the box.
I mean, and I love that you mentioned red carpets because sort of the festival experience is going to be completely different now. We're all sort of living our lives on Zoom and doing junkets virtually, and it's a different beast. And I mean, how have you sort of found sort of how the move that we're all making is going?
Yeah, listen, I think we're going in a positive direction here. I think that,
I agree.
You know what? I think all of us broadcasters, bloggers, writers, producers, filmmakers are getting creative because right now is the time to create. And right now I feel like everything is all digital.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think that right now we're taking use of that. We're taking use of this time and we're doing something productive and quite fascinating stuff. So guys, I got so much juice for you here. With Spotlight TV, we got 2 more documentaries. Okay. And we have The Kids of Chimborazo, about 3 Indigenous families in Ecuador in Chimborazo. And we're putting the spotlight on that, on their day-to-day lives. That's coming up soon. And then I have another documentary called Human Trafficking with Johanna Luna, putting the spotlight on human trafficking. And that's also a beautiful documentary, heartfelt piece. And then we got 40 new episodes for Spotlight TV in season 9. So I'm keeping it busy. And then I got a podcast too, Spilling the Tea with Joanna and Joey. Like I'm just creating. And I'm just making stuff because that's just, you got to like use this time wisely and effectively and just get some good stories.
And I mean, there is so much to be said for just putting it out there and just throwing ideas up against the wall and seeing what sticks, because that's really how sort of the good stuff comes out. And like, I'm kind of curious, what is it about? Because I love how you harp on story and how you really seem passionate about the art of storytelling in general.
Yeah.
What is
Yeah.
it about that that really drew you in? Was it a movie? Was it maybe a story on the news when you were younger? Like, what was sort of that initial formative moment where you sort of understood how much you love stories?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. I appreciate that. I love that you see that there's love for what I do. Honestly, as a kid, I was always that kid, Dave, that I always talked a lot. I was always that kid that talked a lot in elementary school and in high school. And I was always that kid that always just like entertained the classroom and with like stories. And like, I always loved literature and like always curious and always ask the questions to the teachers. I used to be that annoying kid, always raise my hand, Mrs. or Mr. Like, how come it's like that? I used to challenge the teachers. So I was always curious.
Yeah.
So I always felt I was always that curious individual. And I've always loved books, like especially poems, Spanish
Okay.
poems, or stories that are short stories or indigenous stories. Like I always fell in love with like story time. I was like, if I wasn't a journalist, I would have been a singer or a librarian. So I don't know. I made this work. So it just worked out.
Well, it's a beautiful thing. You're doing well for yourself. And I mean, that kind of leads into something else I wanted to ask because, especially in our business, pre sort of COVID, everything had been geared towards those 4 minute hits, those 6 minute hits, being sort of quick, digestible stuff.
Yeah.
But conversely, especially with podcasting and with other stuff, there seems to be more of a put, not necessarily a push, but a desire to sort of be able to be conversational. At least I know from my
Yeah.
perspective, that's what I'm trying to do with this show, just to be more conversational with it and sort of try to get to know people and pick their brains on projects and so on and so forth. But just to allow a little bit more natural flow to it as opposed to sort of being sort of that prepackaged hit that was more consumable back then. How have you found sort of the transition between wanting those quick hits versus letting something breathe a little bit more?
Yeah. So with journalism, right, we report the facts, right? We're just the messengers, right? So I have a journalism broadcast diploma from Sheridan College, and I went to university at Griffith University for my BA in journalism, right? And when I went to J school, the most important thing is finding those good feel stories, finding those human stories, right? And with radio, radio is the theater of the mind, right? It's very conversational. Whereas TV is also conversational, but it depends on the format. It depends on the package that you're producing, right? It could be a reporter package. It could be a feature. It could be a docu-series. It could be a web series, especially in a digital era. It all depends, right, of what you want to do. But I think a really good journalist knows that real good stories, it takes time to develop the art of storytelling. Like most of us journalists, whether we finish off our career at 40 or 45, we'll get into PR or we'll get into government work. We realize, hey, like journalism and storytelling, it's key. Like when you have a good story, you piggyback on it. You can do so much with it. You can do a documentary out of a news story. It's up to the
Yeah.
journalist to find a really good story and find a good source and a good central character. And that's what we did here with Spotlight TV. We actually produced our first documentary that got federal attention called Speak Gwich'in to Me on revitalizing one of Canada's dying languages called Gwich'in. It's an Indigenous language.
Oh,
It
wow.
got rave reviews. It's on JC Firth, a central character based at a Yellowknife. And we filmed it in the Yukon Territory. And that was produced in 2016. And I knew that I needed to do something about this because she was actually one of our guests with a radio station with CKLB Radio, The Voice of Denedict, because I was the morning show producer, news reporter, and morning show host. And she was actually a news story. And I got that story and I piggybacked and I said, this is a great, great story. How come nobody's done a documentary on this? And I funded it. And it got bought out. And I was so impressed. I was so happy with my work. When you get acknowledged and you get acknowledged by your peers and your fellow colleagues, you're doing something right.
How do you keep the line? Because I mean, this is something I'm always curious about, especially when, news and sort of filmmaking sort of collide in documentary form. Because sometimes you can make a film that you're getting very personal about and you're getting very attached to the story, but at the same time you still have to sort of keep that journalistic objective line. And I'm kind of curious from your
Mhm.
perspective, how do you sort of walk that tightrope and not make it
Yeah.
too much one way or too much the other?
Yeah, for sure. First and foremost, being a journalist, you have to be objective, right? You
Mm.
have to be objective. You have to stay neutral and just report the facts. And you leave the message to your audience for them to determine what the outcome, what the takeaway is from a documentary or from an article or from a radio piece or from a TV piece. Because at the end of the day, you're just the messenger and the messenger of truth. And that's how you do it.
So, would you define yourself more journalistic or more as sort of a creative, artistic storyteller? Because, I mean, they can both coexist, but I've got to imagine there's going to be one brain that sort of dominates the other.
Yeah, well, I went to university for journalism, right? And luckily, I'm a journalist, right? First and foremost, but I'm also a documentary Canadian filmmaker, which I have that under my credits, which I'm really proud of. And I also do voiceover work and describe video, and I've done a lot of radio because I have more radio experience than TV. And I'm versatile. You have to be a jack of all trades. I think that if you have a good story, roll with it, rock and roll, make it happen, but also try to be objective and don't allow yourself too much to get too into it. Just let your central character and let the sources that you're interviewing speak for themselves.
How do you think the art of storytelling has changed over the years, especially given all the technology that we have access to? Because I mean, like at least from my perspective, there's a lot of positives to it, but I can imagine there's some negatives as well.
Oh yeah, funding for sure. Like I fund all my projects. I'm the executive producer for Speak Witchin to Me, for the kids at Chimborazo and human trafficking. Like
Yeah,
there's definite challenges, absolutely. But I think when you're passionate and you love what you do, you overcome those challenges. You want to make sure to get it and understand it and build a team that will understand your vision. Because behind this project, you have to have a solid team.
yeah. And the cream's going to rise to the top no matter what. You just have to put in the energy and the effort to stay positive with it. And that's so much of this business comes down to that because
Attitude, my friend. You're absolutely right. It's
there's going to
always
be a
about the
thousand
attitude.
no's in this business, but you only need the one yes.
That's right. Damn straight. That's so true.
Now, for you, I especially want to think back when maybe you were younger. Is there a movie or even a moment in a movie that
Yes.
stood out for you that maybe sort of was a formative moment that you want to talk about?
Oh, because I'm Latin. Okay, Dave, I'll tell you. I love Selena. Okay.
Oh, for
Selena.
sure. Yeah,
Wow. Or In Love and War with Chris O'Donnell and Sandra Bullock.
yeah.
It's based on Ernest Hemingway's true love story.
Yeah.
And wow, that piece. Delight. The takeaway of a true love story about a young Hemingway. It was just such a beautiful story. Chris O'Donnell killed it. Sandra Bullock killed it. It was based in Italy, and it's about their story, their love story, and how they could have made it, but he didn't forgive her. He didn't forgive the nurse. And I was just like, oh no, why didn't he forgive the nurse? They could have been together. But it was a beautiful story. That's that I think earlier on in my career when I was a kid, because I remember watching that film when I was very young. I think that it struck a chord. I was like, wow, the art of film and the films and like Ernest Hemingway, him being an amazing American novelist, the greatest of America. I fell in love with film, and I think I became an entertainment journalist because I love film, I love art, I love interviewing really cool creative souls that have a good story.
Can you break out the crystal ball and even sort of predict what may happen in the entertainment business sort of going forward, just given all the changes that are happening and how everything is really sort of evolving hour to hour, day to day? It's
Yeah,
really one of those
yeah,
things where you sit back and look at it. It's like this is unprecedented change for
yeah,
our business.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm just curious from your perspective, how do you see sort of things settling at some point?
Well, first and foremost, Dave, we got to be positive. We got
Yeah,
to be positive, right? We have, like, this is my philosophy in life. Always said this. Hey, if you got a good family, you got good food, and you got shelter, those are the three necessities in life to be happy, right? So
exactly.
we have to have a good attitude right now, especially during these tough times, because we're in lockdown.
Yeah.
We're in lockdown, and we just have to stay positive. And in terms of the entertainment world, hey, nobody's stopping us. We're still doing digital stories. We're still doing SoundCloud. We're still
Yeah.
doing radio hits. So we're just making it work.
And that's an important thing. And because at the end of the day, it's like, I mean, one of my personal philosophies is always that the cream will rise to the top. And if you put your foot down and you just keep going and you don't say no and you don't give up, that's how ultimately you find some sort of success and ultimately happiness in this business.
Absolutely. Well said, my friend, because you know what? This business can be a cutthroat business.
Amen to that, sister.
I've heard a lot of no's before I heard a lot of yeses. Okay. And I've lost major gigs, and I will disclose this fully to you, Dave. This is an exclusive here. I lost last year in November, the Weather Channel. I lost a gig there. It would have been an amazing opportunity to be on air for, doing the 7-day forecast for the week coming up, in Oakville. I lost that major job. It broke my heart, but I took something away from it. I said, we just got to keep on going and be tenacious. And then I lost a job with CTV News in February as a producer. And I said to myself, there's a reason. There has to be bigger and better out there for me. So you just got to stay positive.
You get up, you dust yourself off, you keep moving forward.
And you can never take anything personal.
No, in this business, that is so true. That is really so true, and good advice for anybody listening out there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at the end of the day, just to start putting a bow on this, for you as someone who is passionate about story, is there a movie or a TV show or even like a book or an article you read one day that would count as sort of that desert island thing that you just can't live without?
That's another good question. Yes, there's a lot of books. Ernest Hemingway, I love his story. I love The Four Agreements. I love Margaret Atwood. I love self-help guidebooks, like those good books where you can take away something out of it. I have a good one. Have you heard of Gary Chapman?
Oh, yes.
What is Your Love Language? That's a bestseller. 1992. Okay, I read his book. Wow. And I found out my love language is being a gifter, receiving gifts. So I love it. I love it.
That's a hint. She wants me to get her a gift.
But it's really cool, right? Because like everyone's got different their love languages, right?
Right.
So that's one of my favorite books. I would say top three.
Lovely. I like that. Now, I lose track of everywhere you are. Tell the world what's going on, because I'm excited about this podcast too. Tell me a little bit more about that just before we put a bow on this, because the podcast world really does allow so much freedom to do kind of whatever the hell you want.
That's right. Unfiltered. Absolutely. So our podcast, we have an amazing co-host. His name is Joey Gatt, fresh off of J School. He's an amazing Canadian talent. We're talking pop culture, business. We're talking relationships. It's called Spilling the Tea with Johanna and Joey. Coming up in January of 2021, we're doing Spotify. Okay, we're doing SoundCloud. We're putting it up everywhere on our digital platform. So we're excited. So we already started it. It's prepackaged, but we're going to finish up a little more episodes. It's only going to be 10 episodes in 30 minutes. And we're excited to let your audience take a listen to it.
Sweet. And I expect an invite for season 2 too.
I will.
But you know what? That's it for me. And I just want to say thank you for being on, because, we've always gotten along and we've always had fun working the festival trail. And you are an absolute delight to be around. And I've missed your beautiful face. And I just want to say thanks again for the time.
Oh, thank you so much, Dave. Honestly, I appreciate you, and I appreciate you and your team, what you guys are doing there in the seats. You guys are so key in the world right now with film criticism and telling the public, hey, these are the top 5 flicks to watch for.
And you know what? It's all about stories and letting people know about people, which at the end of the day is why we all got into this business, isn't it?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Well, thanks again, sister. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks. You take care, eh?
All right. And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.